Hello, it's me again, Charlotte Henson. I'm recording this from my computer, and I am in my onesie. Apologies for the onesie, but it's damn comfortable. The reason for this video today is I want to take part in the Say It Forward campaign, which is a campaign organised by the International Bipolar Foundation, with the idea of busting stigma by talking about our mental illnesses. Now, on my Facebook I talk about my mental illness quite a lot because it's a big part of my life. And probably this video won't come as no surprise to the people on my Facebook, but I'm hoping for the people on YouTube it will do some good. My condition, I guess, started with, the first time I realised that something was not right, and I only realised it wasn't right quite a bit later on in my life, is when I was 7 I attempted to hang myself with a belt, which is not a normal coping mechanism, but it was my coping mechanism at the time. And looking back, that's a little bit worrying. But really, when all my symptoms started to actually come forward was in my very early teens. When I was 11, I would grab hold of fistfuls of nettles because the pain helped somehow, and by 12 I had started self-harming, and by 13 my bipolar symptoms are starting to emerge. And it started out as depression, largely. I was cutting all the time, I wasn't sleeping, I was generally quite depressed. But another thing that happened was I started getting panic attacks at my school. So I stopped going to school and I started going to a day patient unit for people with mental health problems. And it was there that doctors first noticed my mood swings. I was about 13 by this point, and I would fluctuate very dramatically and very quickly between very hyper and energetic, I'd be running around, I'd be talking to everyone, I'd be 100 miles an hour, to cutting myself in the toilets. And this wasn't a surprise to the nurse. They got used to it eventually, and to the point where they just stopped saying anything. Just adjusting the onesie. They just stopped saying anything because they were used to it by then. And after a bit, this got too much. I was making regular suicide attempts, so I went into hospital. I went into an inpatient unit. I went to the Priory in Altrincham. I was there for quite a long time, actually. Didn't do much good. I'd started on psych meds by this point. I started on quetiapine, which works for a lot of people, but for me it helped me sleep. It did help me sleep, which is a good thing, I guess. Well, it's more than a good thing, because my entire disorder it fluctuates around my sleep. If I don't sleep enough, I get manic. If I sleep too much, I get depressed. For me, my disorder is ruled by my sleep. But anyway, yeah, I discharged myself from the Priory after about 9 months. Because it wasn't doing anything for me, and I was manic, and I got into an argument, and I punched the wall until my knuckles were the size of golf balls. They're not anymore. Didn't even break it, but it was about that big, and it was grey. It was black and grey. But yeah, on an impulse I discharged myself, which was a stupid thing to do in retrospect, because about 2 to 3 months later I had stashed up all my medication and took a massive overdose, which put me in a coma for 4 days and stopped my heart beating several times. So yeah, after that overdose, after a couple of months in hospital for my physical health after that, I went into another hospital, a semi-secure unit, where I was out of it. I was in what's called a mixed episode, which is where you are manic, which is where you're very up and hyper, and depressed, which is where you're very down and low, at the same time, somehow, and it is the most awful thing. It is rubbish. It is hellish. It is like nothing else I've ever known. So yeah, I was in a mixed episode and I was having psychosis. Things were not good for me that time. But then I moved out. I got discharged from there with no medication, no therapy, nothing, which was extremely irresponsible. And I went to my dad's house rather than my mum's house. And it was at this point my life turned around, really, because I had routine and stability, and this is something that I'd not had before. And I was stable for a couple of years without medication. It was only when I went to university that my symptoms started to come back. The first time I went to university, I launched into a year-long manic episode, which, for those of you who aren't aware, is a very, very long time for a manic episode. Usually they last about maybe a couple of months max. In the middle of that, I took another large overdose. It was about 200 paracetamol. But that was just when I was crashing, and then after I took it, I went straight back up again. There was no stopping me, and on an impulse, and I had to go home after that overdose. And I was back at my mum's and bouncing for a couple of months before I impulsively decided to sign up for another uni in clearing and went there, even though I just was not well enough to go to university. And there I got hospitalised 5 times in a row for various reasons: mania, depression, mixed episode psychosis, everything. Was not well at all. I came home and I continued to be ill for a long, long time. And this all culminated into another mixed episode with psychosis. Psychosis, for those of you who don't know, and I've been using that term and not really explaining it, is paranoia, hallucinations, delusions, the things that you usually associate with schizophrenia. So yeah, I went into psychosis and I was hearing voices telling me to kill myself. They were planning my suicide for me, and I was scared shitless because, well, I didn't want to die, but these voices, it's a hard thing to explain to people who've never heard voices, command hallucinations especially, which is where they tell you to do stuff. It's a hard thing to explain to people who haven't experienced that, and they say, why can't you just say no to them? And that's not how it works. I don't know why it is, I don't know why it's impossible to say no to them, but it is, and that's just how it works. So yeah, I was very, very scared, and I was not very well. But like last time, it took the mixed episode of psychosis for me to get better again, and I found the right medication, the medication that works for me. I currently take lithium, which is the standard for bipolar. Not everyone with bipolar takes lithium, but it's the oldest one. It's got the most evidence for it. I take risperidone, which is an antipsychotic, which just means I don't get my hallucinations and it helps me not get manic. And I take lamotrigine, which is a mood stabiliser like lithium is. I'm going off lamotrigine soon because it's not doing anything for me. But I have literally been on every mood stabiliser and every antipsychotic going, and that's not an exaggeration. I have. So yeah, I think medication can be a good thing, and I think there's a big stigma about medication. I don't think all mental illness can be treated with medication, and I think there's a good idea to strike a balance between psychological therapies and medication. And I think it's also good to find the right environment, as in sleep hygiene, making sure you're sleeping okay, as in routine, as in maintain a routine day, doing things. I think it's quite similar with ADHD actually. ADHD sufferers find routine helps their condition a lot, and it's the same with bipolar. I think obviously there's the medication. That's what's worked for me anyway. Lots of people have different things that help them, like eating right, like exercising, like talking to people. And for me, it's the sleep, the routine, and the meds. I think there is still a big stigma about mental illness, and I don't know why that is. I think it's because maybe we can't see this. I think our society is very fixed on what is physical, and what you can see, and what you can touch, and what you can smell and hear, and I think to mental illness sufferers, a lot of it is quite physical, because people do experience hallucinations from time to time, and they are physical in a way, because you can hear them, see them, smell them, touch them. If that's the case, I think it's usually, with hallucinations, it's usually auditory. But people also see things quite commonly, and I'm not sure what else to say really. I think I'm waffling a bit. But yeah, that's been my story. I'm Charlotte Henson. I run a blog called In the Corners on the Edges, which publishes articles about mental health. If you're interested, check that out. The URL is itcote, it's coat, which is short for In the Corners on the Edges, .wordpress.com. I think there's a lot of good places. If you are ill and you need to find help, I think your first port of call should be your GP, who can then refer you to a mental health team and get you a CPN or a care coordinator, or any of these big words that basically means someone who's there for you, that sticks up for you. I think also charities like Mind, Rethink, Sane, and for medications, Nice. They all have lovely names, don't they? Nice. All these charities and organisations are there to help people with mental illnesses. Samaritans are good to talk to. They're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I think once you're within services, as in you've got a care coordinator or a CPM, then your first protocol will actually be crisis team if you're struggling. Don't get me started on crisis team. They do good work, but there's a lot of work to be done. I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, I think there's also a bit of a coming out process with mental illness, like as there is with coming out as gay or bisexual or pansexual or asexual or anything like that. I think that can be difficult, but I think it's worthwhile. I wouldn't advise people hide it. But I mean, if that's what you feel you need to do, then go ahead and do it. Anyway, I'm going to stop because I'm waffling. Thank you. See ya.